And the Yutu-2 rover has left the first tracks on the dusty surface of the moon's far side. And after taking a nap, so to speak, the rover has restarted its work. And CGTN will look at what is being detected and what science research hope to conduct through the mission on the moon's far side. Well, it has been about a month since Chang'e-4 was launched into space. Now let's take a look at the journey so far.
The probe, including a lander and a rover, was launched by a Long March 3B carrier rocket. This took the spacecraft directly into the Earth-Moon transfer orbit. The probe then embarked on a voyage of around 5 days to the moon. As it approached, the probe decelerated and conducted space braking to enter an elliptical lunar orbit. Chang'e-4 then orbited the moon for about half a month, preparing for landing. During the landing process, the probe quickly adjusted its altitude on its approach. Then the Beijing Control Center chose when to land on the far side of the moon. The craft landed on the von Karman crater at the South Pole Aiken Impact Basin. Later, the Yutu-2 rover detached from the lander. Both the lander and rover carry scientific payloads of instruments to study the geophysics of the landing zone. They have sent images of the far side of the moon to the control center.
And for more about Chang'e-4, the Lunar Mission, we're now joined by our reporter Wu Lei, who has been following this. Good afternoon, Wu Lei.
Hello, Zoe.
Of course, we all know that Chang'e-4 is just follow-up on Chang'e-3's version, launched in 2013. But any new improvements and highlights of this new spacecraft?
Indeed, because we know that the two spacecrafts are very similar, but Chang'e-4 has very different scientific objectives. Unlike Chang'e-3, which landed on the near side of the moon 5 years ago, and the Chang'e-4 landed on the far side of the moon, its rover Jade-Rabbit-2 is to survey the lunar terrain in the von Karman crater, and it is equipped with advanced communication technologies and sensors, so it can send back first-hand data with the help of the Queqiao relay satellite. And with the moon shielding from the spacecraft from Earth's interference, Chang'e-4 will be able to carry out unprecedented radio observations at low frequencies not possible on Earth due to its atmosphere. And scientists have installed many new experiment payloads on the lander and the rover Chang'e-4. And for example, the China-Sweden jointly developed advanced small analyzer instruments will tell scientists how the sensors will interact with the moon. And also the China-Germany developed lunar lander neutrons payload will help understanding in processors the lunar surface while also being sensitive to possible presence water. Back to you, Zhou.
And also we understand that Yutu-2 or Jade Rabbit has been roaming on the moon's surface. Any updates on its movement?
Exactly. We know that the Jade Rabbit-2 weighs around 140 kilograms, and it's the lightest lunar rover in history. And experts say the Yutu-2 faces more challenges than the first Yutu, as its landing area, the Aitken Basin, is the largest, deepest, and oldest crater on the moon. But after being rolled down from the lander, the Yutu-2 took a nap as the solar radiation raised the temperature of the lunar surface to over 100 degrees Celsius. It restarted work on Thursday. And at this morning, the China National Space Administration said the lander, the rover, and the relay satellite are all in good condition, and it has released 360-degree panoramic photos taken by a camera installed on the top of the lander. And after that, the Yutu will continue its scientific survey in the von Karman crater, but a 14-day-long lunar night is approaching. And experts say during the moon's nighttime, the rover will enter a dormant state, and it will store away its solar panels, just like sleeping and being covered with a quilt. And like the first Jade Rabbit, the Jade Rabbit-2 is also designed to work for 3 months, but scientists hope it can have a more stable and even longer journey. Back to journey.
So these two machines have been in place. What can we expect next?
Okay, and according to the scientists' plan, later today, the rover will be moving to the other side of the lander and take an image of the lander and send the pictures back through the relay satellite, giving the symbol of success of the Chang'e-4 lunar mission. So right now we can say that not only these hundreds of thousands of space engineers and also millions of space enthusiasts today are looking forward for the image taken on the camera from the lander.
From the lander and rover. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, China's lunar landing probe on the far side of the moon last week marked a milestone for the nation's space industry. But 15 years since China launched the core of its space program, is the industry still on par with the rest of the world? Our own Ning Hong talks to scientists and engineers who've been enjoying this and reflecting the successes and discuss what lies ahead.
A late start, but another successful landing. A lot was expected of China's lunar exploration project when it launched in 2004. The project was named after a widely known Chinese mystical figure, Chang'e, the Chinese goddess of the moon. On October 24, 2007, the Chang'e-1 blasted off from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan Province, atop a Long March 3A rocket. The second probe was launched in 2010. It sent back 3D images of the moon and was sent to explore an asteroid named Totatis after the mission. China's lunar exploration project was divided into 3 phases: circle, land, and return. Many say the most remarkable mission was in 2013 when the Chang'e-3 soft landed on the moon.
对于3号来讲呢
The Chang'e-3 was the first soft landing mission we made. It was a completely new mission with limited technology and products that were inherited from our previous missions. We were facing the challenge to find creative solutions on technology, systems, and product over about 80% of the project.
After the success of the Chang'e-3, China's lunar exploration project entered a third phase, the return. As the backup of Chang'e-3, the Chang'e-4 is given a mission to further explore unknown territories and offer a glimpse to people on the Earth. On January 3rd, the probe softly touched down on the South Pole's Atacama Basin on the far side of the moon. And soon after the landing, it sent back the first ever image of the lunar surface on the dark side, along with a picture of the lunar rover Yuetu 2 rolling away from the probe.
We conducted 4 tests on the lifespan of the patroller on the ground under simulated high and low temperatures on lunar surface terrain. The goal is to increase its reliability and sustainability. The designated target of the mission is for the rover to patrol for at least 10 kilometers.
China's lunar exploration project began shortly after the world entered a new millennium. The project is a reflection of China's space cooperation goals, with simple targets and pure motives for science exploration.
Unlike
the space competition during the 60s and 70s, the funding and manpower investment of China's space exploration has been rational, restrained, and scientific. Although we started late, we started from a high ground. With limited investment, we have made many achievements. We've made only 4 launches so far, and even with some glitches, the missions were successful every time.
The Long March 3A 3-stage rocket has increased the payload capacity. It has allowed the probe to carry more payloads to the moon.
There are also scientific instruments from other countries in the world, for example, Netherlands and Sweden. And this is also a milestone of international cooperation in lunar exploration.
Among the slew of international payloads on board the Chang'e-4, there's a very low-frequency radio interferometer, which will be able to study the universe at extremely low wavelengths while the moon shields it from the Earth's radio noise.
In the future, we intend to set up science stations on the moon. We have designed more space on board for instruments from other countries. We welcome more scientific loads and even cooperation in system and subsystem integration and sharing of our scientific and engineering data.
China's lunar exploration will continue with Chang'e-5, which is expected to bring lunar soil back to the Earth. Ning Hong, CGTN, Beijing.
And to talk about the mission, we're now joined in the studio by Yang Yuguang. He's a professor from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Cooperation, as well as vice chair of the IAF Space Transportation Committee. And also, we have Professor Su Yan from the National Astronomical Observatories, which is under the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Welcome to both of you. I'd like to ask you first, Professor Su. People say landing on the moon has been done before, but landing on the far side of the moon is different. It's first time by human being.
Yeah.
How difficult is that?
We met several major challenges. Data processing, data receiving is one of them. For previous two missions, Chang'e-1 and Chang'e-2 are orbiters. The orbiter flight around the moon. We could receive the downlink data when the orbiter flight around the near side of the moon. Chang'e-3 landed on the near side of the moon. We still can see it using ground telescopes. But for Chang'e-4, the lander and the rover landed in South Pole Akan Basin. We will never see them from the Earth. So we launched the Queqiao relay satellite, which was placed in an orbit of around the Earth to move L2 point. Queqiao could see the backside of the moon and the Earth simultaneously. So it received the data from the lander and the rover firstly, and then sent back to the Earth. Let's take an example. If there is a war between Professor Yang and me, we can't see each other. But if you...
I can relay the messages.
Yeah, if you sit above the wall, you can see both of us. So we can communicate where you are the relay.
So is this the first time that Queqiao has been conducting communication in such a sophisticated mission?
Yes,
It
the
is.
First time, yeah.
And also, Professor Yang, they say that we can do a lot of things, a lot of research and science on the far side of the moon, otherwise wouldn't be possible. What will be the science missions?
Well, you know that's because of the tide lock, so the moon always facing Earth on one side and we cannot see the other side from the Earth. So there are many scientific goals of this mission. You know that on the near side of the moon, usually you can see many lunar mares or the seas, which are very dark, usually composed of the basalt, this kind of rock. While on the other side, you can seldom see any lunar mare, only some highlands. And on the highlands, they are rich on the another side, this kind of rock. So you can see that the components and rocks on the surface of the moon is quite different.
So the geography and the geology is different on the far side.
The terrain of the surface is also quite different. Professor Su has mentioned the difficulty on the other side of the moon, on the far side of the moon, because the terrain is more steep and we cannot find many places which is relatively flat. So the landing procedure itself is really difficult. And to studying the rocks on the lunar surface, we can have a better understanding of the history and evolution of the moon and have a better understanding of the Earth-Moon system. So that is very meaningful on science.
I understand there was an engineering breakthrough, that is the low radio frequency detector used on the mission this time. Can you tell us why low radio frequency instrument are used and what is the purpose, Professor Su?
We placed a low frequency radio spectrometer on board the Chang'e-4 lander for extra terrestrial signals with frequencies below 10 to 20 megahertz cannot be studied on the Earth because they are reflected off or severely distorted by the Earth's ionosphere. Furthermore, there are some sources of radio interference on the Earth exist, such as auroral radio broadcasts and lightning. The far side of the moon doesn't suffer either of these problems. Because the moon has extremely thin ionosphere, so which allows very low frequency observation.
So we can detect some radio signals from the space on the far side of the moon, which couldn't happen on the Earth. But what kind of radio signals can we get and why we should listen to them?
Yeah, for low frequency, we could observe the such as the solar and the planetary bursts. And we can't do it on the Earth because we have ionosphere protection and signal noise on the Earth. So we only can do it is the unique. It is a unique site for low-frequency radio astronomy.
That's why we should say this is a breakthrough for science discovery of this mission. Thank you very much. Before we move on to some of the international reactions to the mission, let's look at the spacecraft's journey from launch to landing. China's lunar exploration program has fostered and promoted cooperation that is truly international. Let's look at the collaboration.
A neutron radiation detector aboard the lander, developed by Germany, is making a preliminary assessment for future spacecraft landings or manned lunar landings. The Swedish-designed neutral atom detector on the rover is helping scientists better understand the interaction of radiation from the sun, also known as solar wind, with the moon's surface. The power equipment is supplied by radioisotope sources of electricity produced in Russia. The radioisotope EAT source, a collaboration between Chinese and Russian scientists, supports the probe to spend the lunar night safely. Each lunar night is equivalent to about 14 days on Earth, and the temperature can fall to minus 180 degrees Celsius. The relay satellite, named Queqiao, is equipped with a low-frequency radio spectrometer developed by Dutch scientists. The device will help scientists listen to the deeper reaches of the cosmos. And an optical camera made in Saudi Arabia, carried aboard the Longjiang-2 lunar microsatellite, has returned images from lunar orbit. In addition, the ground station that China built in Argentina has played an important role in the monitoring and control of the mission. Ground stations run by the European Space Agency will also offer operational support. The scientists of NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter have also cooperated with the Chang'e-4 mission team to study the landing of the probe.
And China's pioneering work on the moon has attracted the attention of the world. The editor of NASAWatch.com, Keith Cowan, says China is getting important work done by taking on the mission.
This landing is very important, and unfortunately sometimes countries can't work together because of politics, and in the US it's a problem. However, there are ways that NASA scientists can work with China, and scientists in universities around the United States can work with China. And they have been heavily involved in Chang'e-4's landing on the moon and the U-2 rover. And as a matter of fact, there's a major scientific paper being written right now with an American as the co-author. So despite some of the politics that may interfere, science still goes on, and China is playing a very important role in the study of the moon.
British space expert Sir Martin Sweeten also talked about international cooperation in space, saying world scientists should be able to work together on lunar exploration.
The very welcome features of, particularly of this mission, Jade Rabbit 2, is the international participation and collaboration. We've got a number of countries contributing to the instruments. I think the opportunity for international collaboration in space science is really, really important. And of course, on receiving the data that will come back and interpreting it, hopefully this will strengthen the international collaboration between China and a number of these other nations.
And now we're joined by our correspondent, Julia Chapman, in Russia. Well, Julia, Russia is one of the pioneers in lunar exploration. How are Russian scientists talking about the lunar mission of Chang'e?
Well, they're certainly watching it very closely indeed. As you say, they were the pioneers in the field of lunar exploration back in the days of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was the first country to complete a hard landing on the moon and then later a soft landing on the moon, although of course they were beaten to that major accomplishment of putting man on the moon by the US. And ever since then, the Russian lunar exploration program has sort of petered out a little bit, but there definitely seems to be a renewed impetus now with China becoming a major player in space exploration and looking at lunar exploration specifically. There seems to be a new trend in the way of lunar exploration as space agencies from major players such as Russia and the US seem to be re-upping their efforts to develop lunar exploration. And Russia is one of those countries that's certainly looking to put man on the moon in the future. It's got a new Luna program that it's starting in 2021. That's the planned date of Russia putting its next probe, automated probe, on the moon. And from there, going on to eventually build an actual habitable area for people to live on the moon. And so those are some of the ambitions that Russia has, and they're of course watching China very closely as a potential partner for some of those ambitions. And this particular accomplishment of the Chang'e probe landing safely on the far side of the moon is certainly one of those things that where they're hoping to cooperate.
Well, the Chang'e-4 involves payloads from different countries. For example, Holland, Sweden, Germany, Saudi Arabia. Also involves cooperation from Russia, Argentina, and the US. Of course, Russia has been teaming up with the US in space efforts. How important is international cooperation for space exploration like this?
Well, it's enormously important because, of course, space exploration is not only very costly but also very complex, and so no one country can execute these very ambitious projects on their own entirely. It would simply not be possible, and so cooperation between countries with advanced space programs is enormously important. And after the space race, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia and the US have, of course, been working very closely, and there's an idea, a maxim that many people refer to, that space is beyond politics, although this comes at an interesting time, particularly from the Russian perspective, because actually just yesterday the Russian space chief Dmitry Rogozin said that the idea of space being beyond politics may no longer be relevant in this modern day and age, and he was referring to the US preventing him from traveling to visit NASA for a series of talks about further cooperation between NASA and Roscosmos. Rogozin himself is under US sanctions, so there are some suggestions now that the relationship between NASA and Roscosmos could be fading slightly, and that it may be less significant in the future. And as China makes serious strides in the area of space exploration, Russia is certainly looking for new partners, particularly as Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, is much more poorly funded than some of the other space agencies around the world. So looking for potential partners for collaboration such as China is definitely something that Russia will be looking for.
All right, thank you so much for your reporting. And now we're back in the studio with Professor Yang Yuguang from China Aerospace, Space and Science and Industry Cooperation. So, Yuguang, space cooperation has always been a hot topic since the beginning of space explorers. But as our reporter just mentioned, politics is always in the way for scientists and engineers to joining hands. But you've been traveling around the world. How people, scientists and engineers, look at the prospect of future space exploration? Is it possible? Is it necessary? Why?
Well, you know that I belong to the IAF community. The IAF community always thinks that we should play a leading role in the cooperation in the world. For scientific research, you know that any space exploration, like the manned space programs and the deep space programs, are for the benefit of the whole world, for the whole human being. This is one aspect. The other aspect is that all these kind of space science programs need a lot of money. To have some international cooperation which can reduce the threshold for the decision makers to be easier to choose these kind of programs. So this is also very important for us and for the engineers and the scientists, because from the technological view, that this kind of cooperation is very necessary. For instance, for the lunar program or other deep space mission programs, you should have ground stations everywhere in the world. You can see that since the Chang'e-4 mission, we already have the support from European countries and other countries to get the telemetry data and also the telecontrol for the vehicle for Chang'e-4. And for this time, we also have, I'm very happy to see that we not only have some cooperation on engineering aspect, but also have some cooperation on the scientific research. We have 8 major payloads on the rover and lander, while 3 of them are in a very close relationship or very close cooperation with other countries.
So that means we keep updating our partners about our mission and how they can fit in. Otherwise, they wouldn't know that we will launch a lander on the far side of the moon and what kind of equipment they should put there.
Exactly. The communication is very necessary. So before the mission, a long time before that, we should announce to the world the profile of the mission, the parameters of some very key point, and also the interface. These are very important for to know the possibility of this kind of cooperation.
And people are saying China is reaching to the rest of the world for cooperation. As you just mentioned, we have monitoring stations in different continents. And people are saying, is there national security concerns? Because, for example, the United States say, well, China has established a monitor station under Argentina. It can listen to space, but also can listen to what is happening on the ground. So do you think national security should be a concern?
Well, that many people have this concern because of the history or feature of the space technology. Because, of course, any space technology have dual use. And also the space flight comes from the products from the end of the World War II, the V2 missile. But you know that at least for this kind of scientific research, I don't think there are any military background or purpose in it. You know that from the moon to the Earth, you need 3 to 5 days. And also the deep space, as you mentioned, the antennas for the telemetry and the data link has a very large aperture. A large aperture means that it has a very narrow field of view. This can only be applied or used on the space astronomy of the communication between the deep space vehicles. So I don't think this will have any military background.
Some people say, well, the International Space Station will probably decommission in 2022, and then by then China will launch its own space station. So probably China will claim to be the only country to have a space station running by then. Will China allow other partners to come aboard?
The answer is positive. You know that the National Manned Space Agency has already signed many agreements with the, for instance, the UNUSA, the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, and also signed some agreement with such as Italian Space Agency. My friend Roberto Battiston, the former president of Italian Space Agency, signed an agreement with Mr. Wang Zhaoyao, the former director of the China Manned Space Agency. China not only recognizes the future space station as a national laboratory in space, but also recognizes it as one of the most important platform for international cooperation. It has 4 levels of international cooperation. We've already have some joint experiments which have been done on the Tiangong-1 or Tiangong-2 or the Shenzhou spaceships. In the future, we will also have the visit of the foreign astronauts to China space station. And in the future, we can also, it is possible, technically speaking, we have a visit of foreign spaceships as a cruise ship or a cargo ship. And the highest level will be a cooperation on modular level, which means that we can, like the manner on the International Space Station, we can have the modules docked and be part of our future space station from other countries.
So that means when we are designing the space station in the first place, from scratches, we are considering the possibility of docking with other countries space vehicles.
Very exactly. You know that our space station have a T-shaped design, a core module and 2 experimental modules. In the future, it is possible have a secondary core module. The secondary core module will have multiple noding ports. So technically speaking, it is possible for the other extendable modules to dock and join this space station.
Let's talk about the lunar mission this time, the Chang'e-4. Some say Chang'e-4 is a backup for Chang'e-3. And that's why it is almost exactly the same as Chang'e-3, although it has been updated. Why do we need to have another mission that is similar like Chang'e-3? One is on the near side, one is on the far side.
Of course, originally the Chang'e-4 is the backup of Chang'e-3 with the success of Chang'e-3 mission. So the scientific goal of the Chang'e-4 has been changed because you know that landing on the far side of the moon is more meaningful and we can have more meaningful scientific research results. As we have discussed, the far side of the moon have many resources such as the water ice, mainly focusing on the South Pole and North Pole regions, and also it is possible that in the future we can land and set up a permanent base on the far side, which have some regions which are in the permanent sunshine areas. With these features, it's easy for us to solve the problems on such as the energy supply and the thermal control. And with the water ice, we can not only produce water for the astronaut to drink or planting, but also the water can be used to produce propellants for the spacecraft. For this kind of spacecraft, it will be much cheaper to bring these propellants to the lunar orbit than brought them from the Earth for the future potential Mars mission, which will bring it more cheap.
So you are saying very ambitious pictures, because according to my knowledge, the lunar mission is in 3 steps. First is to land a space probe and then land there and rove around, and then we collect soil and come back. You are saying we are trying to establish a station on the moon for future space exploration or experiment. Is that
I just talk about the possibility. It is a common idea all over the world, not only in China but also in other countries. We should learn lesson from the Apollo mission. You know that the Apollo mission landed on the moon, but for almost half a century there is no one visit again. So in the future, to make it sustainable, we should have a permanent lunar base, and also we should focusing on reducing the cost and has a continuous exploration of the moon.
That's a vision of scientists and engineers. And now let's go live to Beijing Aerospace Control Center, where the engineers and scientists are now briefing on the mission.
A 3D scenario sent back by the relay satellite, which was sent to the space in last March. And it was sent to the halo orbit surrounding the moon. It has been operating for about 14 days, and right now it's about 60,000 kilometers from the lunar surface. And this relay router can help us to keep a data receiving from the probe as well as the lander. Now we invite the leaders to see the live footage of the operation processes. This is shot by the lander's camera. Right now, the lander is about 3 kilometers away from the surface. The probe is now at the suspension mode. It's about 100 meters from the surface. Once it's stabilized, it slowly goes down to make a soft landing on the moon surface. Now is the footage showing the division of the separation of the rover and the lander. The rover is at the top of the lander. It moves slowly forward to the front end. Once the rover is in place, the ground control will send signals for transfer. After the signal is sent, it directs the rover to go onto the surface of the moon. Now is the footage shot by the rover's camera. Now is the footage shot by the rover's camera scanning the geological condition of the landing site. Now is a shot of the rover's camera shot from point B. You can see the path that is scheduled, and you can also see the point of contact and the route the rover has traveled. Now we invite the leaders to inspect on our work. This is Beijing Control Center. The rover has gone to the destined location. Please report. Huashan is ready. Linhai is ready. Yehe is ready. Shanghai is ready. Changcheng is ready.
韶山巡视器工况正常，准备完毕。
Shaoshan is ready.
望月中继星工况正常，准备完毕。
Wangyue is ready.
望舒准备完毕。
Wangshu is ready. Beichen.
北辰图像接收处理准备完毕。
Beichen is ready for image processing. Well received.
各号注意，各系统工作正常。
All systems are working according to plan. The imaging work will be processing.
临海明白。
叶河。
Received by 华山、临海、叶河。
长城明白。
长城。
上海明白。
上海。
韶山明白。
韶山。
望月明白。
望月。
望舒明白。
望舒。
北辰明白。
And 北辰。
各号注意，下面组织着陆器地形地貌相机对巡视器成像。16号临海方向相机成像，图像下传，注数据发送准备。
For the rover's cameras.
正确，注数据发出。
Input and send.
北京相机成像，图像下传，注入数据发出。
Beijing sending data of the camera imaging. Beijing report. The image received is normal. Well received.
Beijing 北辰报告。
Beijing report. Message will be sent to Beijing. Copy that.
Well, we are witnessing the control center. Well, the data from the lander rover has been sent down to the Earth. That is a picture taken by the camera on the rover of the lander.
跟踪正常，遥外测数据正常。18号、22号配合，大屏14，两机互拍图像。
We are now receiving the pictures taken by the rovers and landers of each other.
report to the leaders. On the left screen
On the
is the panoramic shot made by the rover, and the right-hand side is shot by the lander. All work are finished.
各号注意，我是北京。 相机图
Attention,
像
this is
接收、
Beijing.
处理、
The
显示正
reception,
常，
the
成像工作正常
processing
结束，
and
后续工
demonstration
作
of the
按预定
pictures
计
are
划实
normal.
施。华山、
Please continue your work.
临海、
Huashan, do you copy? 临海, do you copy?
叶河、叶河明白。
叶河, do you
长城、
copy? 长城, do you copy?
韶山、
韶山明白。
潮汕, do you
望岳、
copy?
望岳明白。
望岳, do you
望
copy?
舒、
望舒
望舒明白。北辰、
and 北辰, do you
北辰明白。
copy?
各号注意，我是北京。
Attention, this
下
is
面请
Beijing Control
探月工
Center.
程总指挥、
Now
国
we
防科工
have
局局长
the
张克俭同志
Mr.
宣
Zhang
布任务结
Keqiao,
果。
the
各号注
leader
意收
of
听。
the Lunar Mission. Please listen carefully.
Good.
尊敬的刘鹤副总理、
Distinguished
张爱
Vice
霞副主
President
席
Liu
各位
He,
领导、
Vice Chairman
同志
Zhang
们
Aixa,
各位来宾、
Dear
同志们
leaders,，
嫦娥4
comrades,
号探测器
the
于2018
Chang'e-4
年
lunar
12月
probe
8日
has
准
landed
时
on
成
the
功发
moon
射。
surface
2019年1月
on
3日，安全着陆月球背面预选
January
区
the 3rd,
鹊桥中继星于
2019,
2018年5月
and
21日
the 鹊
成
桥
功发
relay
射，
satellite has
有效支
successfully
持任务
sent
测控通讯。玉兔2号巡视
images
器
that
与
support
着陆
the
器
the
正
mission,
常分
and
离，
the
两器
Yu-22
完成互拍。
rover
地
has
面接收
successfully
图像
separated
清晰
from
完
the
好。
lander,
中
and
外
the
科
ground
学载
control
荷
center
探测
has
数据
received
正
clear
常下
image
传。
of
着陆
the
器
lunar
巡视器
of
中继
the
星
surface of the
状态良
moon.
好，
The
达到
rover and the
既定
lander are
工
now
程目标，
working in
转
perfect
入科
condition.
学探测
The
阶段。
destined target has
现
been
在我宣布，
has been
嫦娥
finished,
探月工程
and
嫦娥4
all
号
the
任
future
务
work
圆满成功。
is continuing. I hereby declare a complete success of the Chang'e-4 lunar mission.
So that means the commander of the mission has announced the success of this particular task. That is the picture taking of the lander and the rover from each other. So that means obviously both the lander and rover are working okay, and they can take picture of each other, means they are already in position.
Exactly. That's the lander taking pictures of the rover with its terrain camera, and the rover taking pictures of the lander with its panoramic camera. Both the cameras are not only using to taking the pictures of each other, but also these two cameras are very important payload. So we get the images very clear, which means that we not only on the engineering aspect we have been successful, but also some of the scientific research payloads are very normal, in a very normal status.
Okay, let's go live.
At the mission, the lunar probe mission is a complete success at this point. The Central Military Committee, the Central, the Political Bureau send a congratulation note to all the aerospace professionals and engineers working on this project. Chang'e-4 lunar mission is an important part and the first of the term 4 of our lunar mission, and it is the first time in human history that we successfully realized a soft landing on the far side of the moon. It is also the first time for humankind to complete the relay satellite image transfer, we have conducted many meaningful international cooperations with our peers around the world. This is a successful mission under the leadership of the Central Party Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, or the General Secretary Xi Jinping at its core, and it's another remarkable achievement that we've made. This is an important step for us to grow from a big nation in aerospace to a strong nation in aerospace technologies. It also symbolizes that Chinese people are climbing yet another peak in the technological history. It also symbolizes that the Chinese nation is making more contribution to the probing of the secrets of the universe. We are guided of the Xi Jinping thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and the spirit of the 19th National Congress. All of the aerospace professionals have carried on the lunar probing spirits, and with their own actions, they have contributed to the innovative-driven strategies and to create a community of common destiny. It will continue to strengthen our power in technology, integrity, international influence. And it also encourages the whole party, the whole army, as well as all people in China to work towards the beautiful picture described in the 19th National Congress report. The country and the people will forever bear your achievement in mind. The probe into the universe and use the space resources in a peaceful way and realize the humankind's dream is an important mission for our lunar expedition, and this marks the beginning of the fourth phase of our lunar mission. And in the future, we will be facing more daunting tasks and more challenges. Hopefully, the aerospace professionals and engineers can continue to unite around the Central Party Committee with General Secretary Xi Jinping at its core, and guided by Xi Jinping thoughts for socialism of Chinese characteristic for a new era, and carry on the spirit of the 19th National Congress. We should have more awareness and more confidence and protect and safeguard national interest. We should carry on the spirit of manned space missions and continue to put forward this cause in order to realize the national rejuvenation and the great Chinese dream, and build the community of shared destiny and make more contributions. The Central Party Committee, the State Council, as well as Central Military Commission.
That's Vice Premier Liu He sending a message of congratulations to all the scientists and engineers on behalf of the Central Party Committee of the CPC and the State Council and the Central Military Commission. Let's continue our conversation with Professor Yang Yuguang. How do you look at the success so far of Chang'e-4? What is left for the lander and rover?
This is really a very important milestone for China's lunar exploration program, but also a very important milestone for the future lunar exploration of the whole world. You know that, as we have already mentioned, after the Apollo 7 mission in 1972, there is no person have walked on the moon again for almost half a century. But since 1990s, another wave of the lunar exploration started. Things Clementine and the Kaguya mission from the US and Japan, and the Chandrayaan mission from India, and also the Chang'e 1-2 mission from China. With with this phase of the lunar exploration, we pay more attention on the efficiency of the missions, and we want to get more scientific research result from these kind of missions. In the future, I believe this is a very important turning point from the exploration area to the exploitation era. You know that, as we mentioned, we have discussed, on the far side of the moon, there are some areas on permanent sunshine areas, and also there are some permanent shadow areas which have the water ice exist. So in the future, it is possible for human being to have permanent base on the lunar surface, not only to explore more, get more meaningful scientific data from the moon, but also to set up base and prepare the propellants and for the large spacecraft which will be marching to the Mars or even other outer solar system celestial bodies. So it can be recognized as an outpost for the human being in the future.
So this is why a lot of countries and parties are eyeing at the moon. For example, you mentioned India, Israel even are looking at projects sending, and private businesses. Is it all looking at the possibility of using the moon as kind of a base for future space jobs?
Yes, because these kind of studies, you know, that although maybe many of these kind of lunar exploration missions have the payload to study the history or evolution of the moon, but another important part is to monitoring or study the environment, either for the near side of the moon or the far side of the moon. This kind of exploration or research can be recognized as a preparation for the future exploitation.
All right. Thank you very much, Yuguang.
Welcome.
I enjoyed it. The breaking news is China has just released the landing footage of Chang'e-4 lunar probe. That footage was taken on January the 3rd. Let's take a look. Well, Chang'e-4 orbited the moon for half a month preparing for this landing. During the landing, the probe adjusted its altitude on the approach, and then the Beijing Control Center chose when to land on the far side of the moon. The craft landed on the Von Karman crater of the South Pole Iton impact basin. Later, and the U-2. This is still the phase of the landing. While later on, the lander and rover carried their scientific payloads of instruments and studied the geophysics of the landing zone. And they have sent images of the far side of the moon to the control center. And today, they've sent the pictures of the lander and rover through the cameras mounted on the two instruments. And that is our special coverage of the Chang'e-4 mission. And thank you for joining us. We'll keep you posted on the latest progress of the Chang'e mission when there is more discovery on the far side of the moon. I'm Zhou in Beijing. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye for now.